Hi there, I'm glad you're here tonight. Settle in for a story worth hearing and let the world slow down. The phone rang in the morning. Dad, Grandpa died during the night, my daughter said coldly. He left everything to me and my husband. You get nothing. Then my son-in-law snatched the phone from her. You're free, loser. I didn't argue. I didn't hang up. I simply tapped the speaker button because Grandpa was sitting right beside me at the kitchen table with a mug of coffee in his hand. Perfectly alive and in excellent spirits. He leaned toward the phone and said, "Tell me in the comments where you're listening from. It makes me happy to know that somewhere in Dayton or Boise, someone is drinking tea and listening right now. Thank you. Now, let's get to the story." But to understand how Leonard Miller ended up at that table, alive and holding his coffee, we have to go back several years to the day his daughter-in-law Linda came home from a cafe with such a look on her face that Leonard silently stepped aside and let her through the door. Actually, no. We have to go back even further, because Catherine Katie Carter, born Katie Miller, had started long before that lunch. When she was 12, she opened the envelopes relatives had given the family for Christmas. 4 of them, one for her father, one for her grandmother, and one for Katie herself. The next morning, all 4 were found in the trash can, neatly torn along the edge. Richard picked them up and looked at his daughter. Katie held his gaze without blinking. "Dad, there was nothing in them. Your relatives are always giving out junk paper. They were just cards. What was there to look at?" "Just cards," Richard repeated, and put the envelopes back. Linda stood in the doorway, clutching a kitchen towel. "Richard, she's only 12. So she checked the envelopes. Big deal. She's at that age where everything is interesting. Don't ruin the child's holiday over something so small." "You're right," Richard said. "Maybe it really was just stationery." Linda nodded. She did not believe a word of it, but she stayed quiet because believing was easier. In high school, Katie forged excuse notes, copied stamps, changed dates, and scribbled fake signatures. When she got caught, her homeroom teacher did not call the police. She called Richard. He came home, hung up his coat, and told Linda, "I handled it. It won't happen again." "You say that after every stunt she pulls," Linda answered. "And every time, we just wait for the next episode. She's a child. All kids test the world to see how far they can push it. Richard, she isn't testing the world. She's forging documents. That's not curiosity anymore. That's a skill set." In college, Katie routinely inflated her tuition bills. She would name an amount $500 higher than the real one and keep the difference for herself. Every time the family found an explanation, her age, her environment, everybody does it. She'll grow out of it. Katie did not change at 18. She did not change at 25. Linda would later write in the notebook she bought for that exact purpose. "I saw it from the beginning. Every time, I told myself, it happens. She's young. She'll learn." She didn't learn. I learned not to notice, and that guilt is mine almost as much as hers. But all of that was background noise, a familiar uneasiness that did not stop life from going on. Linda fully understood the scale of it on the day Katie invited her to lunch at a cafe in downtown Denver for the first time in 3 months. By then, Linda already knew her diagnosis. The doctors had given her a year, maybe a year and a half. She accepted it without any theatrical bravery. There simply wasn't time to be afraid. She put on a new dress, touched up her lipstick, and drove across the city as if she were going on a date. 2 hours, 120 minutes across from her own daughter. In all that time, Katie did not ask once how her mother felt. Instead, she took out a squared notebook with bent corners and began. "Listen, Mom, Whose name is the house outside Evergreen Inn? Yours or Dad's? Dad's. Got it. And Grandpa's condo downtown? What could you get for it now at market price? Katie, One second, Mom. Let me write that down or I'll forget. Does Dad have a separate bank account? I mean, one that only needs his signature with no authorized users? And Grandpa's savings account. What's the balance? Just give me the rough number. Linda looked at her daughter, who was writing figures in a neat round hand, and felt something inside her go dark. Not her heart, not her hope, the last illusion that her daughter loved her at least a little, at least out of habit. Mom, one last thing. Grandpa's garage, is that actually owned, or is it one of those handshake things? Linda silently finished her cold tea. 22 questions. She counted them. She came home 2 hours later. Leonard opened the door and immediately stepped back. Linda, you look awful. Come sit down. I'm fine. Leonard, would you pour me some tea if you don't mind? He put the kettle on. Linda sat at the table and stared at her hands for a full minute. Do you know that in 2 hours she never asked me how I was? Not once, she finally said. But she pulled out a notebook and started taking inventory. Who owns the vacation house? What is the condo worth? Does Richard have any money tucked away? Leonard, she sat across from me and conducted an asset review. I'm not her mother anymore. I'm a warehouse item about to be written off the books. Leonard poured the tea in silence. The spoon clinked against the edge of the saucer. His hands betrayed him.
Are you sure you're not winding yourself up?
He asked carefully. Maybe they need a loan to expand something. Nathan is always mixed up in some investment or another. Who knows what paperwork the bank asked them for? Leonard, I am dying, and in those 2 hours my own daughter asked me 22 questions. 22. Not one about my health, only square footage, numbers, and documents. In my position, you learn very quickly to tell the difference between concern and asset valuation. Leonard turned the spoon in his fingers, set it down, picked it up, and set it down again. You know, Linda, I spent 30 years in legal at the plant. I could smell fake invoices from across the room. Give me a forged document, and I could follow it like a bloodhound follows a trail. But I missed my own granddaughter. I suppose that's the main flaw of a legal education. It works on strangers and shuts off with family. That's not your legal education, Leonard. That's just love. He fell silent. Then he said, All right, we'll figure this out. Linda looked at him for a long time, without resentment. She knew that expression. When her father-in-law said, We'll figure this out, it meant, I don't want to think about this right now. But she did not have time to wait until he came around. The next day, she bought a leather journal with a ribbon bookmark and started writing. Linda kept those notes for more than a year, not every day, only when there was something to record. The first entry was dated March 2020. Katie called and asked about insurance, not health insurance, life insurance. Who is the beneficiary? How much? I told her. She didn't say goodbye. She just said, Thanks, Mom, and hung up. In May, earrings and a pearl necklace disappeared from Linda's jewelry box, the set Richard had given her on their 20th wedding anniversary. Katie came over to help look. Mom, you could have moved them yourself and forgotten where. With all the treatment you're going through, all those pills you're taking, your memory has to be a little glitchy. Let me check the bedroom. Maybe they fell behind the dresser. Behind the dresser, Katie. The jewelry box was sitting on a shelf, not performing in a circus. It doesn't have legs. It doesn't jump into cracks. Oh, Mom, why do you always get defensive right away? I came over because I wanted to help. Linda wrote. Katie knew where the jewelry box was. No one else had been here. But the most frightening entry appeared in July. Linda found the search history on the family tablet. Involuntary psychiatric commitment of elderly relative. How to get guardianship without consent. Electronic signature without person present. She took screenshots, saved them in a password-protected folder, and called Leonard that same evening. "Leonard, sit down. I need to show you something." She showed him. Leonard was silent for 4 minutes. Linda timed it by the clock on the wall. "Maybe it was for work," he finally said, but his voice had changed. "Nathan deals with investments. There are all kinds of schemes. Maybe, Leonard, electronic signature without person present, is a fraud scheme, not an investment. You ran legal for 30 years. Don't pretend you don't understand. Stop making excuses for her. Remember those envelopes. Remember the school notes. Remember how she squeezed extra tuition money out of us for 4 years. She didn't become this way in one evening. We spent decades looking away." Leonard took off his glasses and wiped them on the edge of his shirt. In 30 years, Linda had seen that gesture exactly 3 times, and all 3 had come before serious decisions. "Linda, do you know what hurts the most? I would have caught any outsider. Any one of them. At work, half a page was enough for me to know a person was lying. But here, 25 years right beside me, and I didn't read a single line. Because you don't want to read your granddaughter like a criminal case. Leonard, that is human, but pretending now that we don't see anything would be a crime." He fell silent. That night, for the first time, he had no answer. In September of 2020, they began building their defense. Leonard found an attorney, Margaret Wilson, and Linda created an appendix to the journal. A list of 12 possible attacks Katie might attempt after Linda's death. Predictions based on knowing her own child. Later, every one of them would come true with such precision that Leonard felt sick. The last entry was written 4 days before the end. "Ricky, if you're reading this, then everything happened the way I feared. Don't blame yourself. You loved her because you're a good father. But now listen to Grandpa. He knows what to do. I love you. Your Linda?" Linda passed away in May of 2021. Leonard hid the journal and waited, patiently. For 3 long years, Katie struck in July of 2024. Through her husband, Nathan Carter, she found a certain Daniel Coleman. He introduced himself as a psychiatrist, wore a badge, and used all the right words. Coleman wrote a report. Richard Miller is aggressive, unstable, and dangerous to himself and others. Katie called a psychiatric emergency team, showed them the paper, and added through tears, "He came at me with a knife. I'm afraid to even go into the house. Please help me." Richard was taken away. He spent 2 days in a locked ward with bars on the windows, surrounded by people with real diagnoses. "Yes, I am completely fine," he told each new shift. "Just call my father, Leonard Miller. Please write down the number." "Of course, Mr. Miller. We'll note everything," they answered politely and entered it into the chart. Patient denies symptoms, insists on discharge. Leonard found out 6 hours later. At 11 that night, he called Margaret Wilson. "Margaret, it's started. She had him locked up in a psychiatric ward. Can you imagine? A healthy man behind a locked door." "Don't panic, Leonard. Who signed the papers?" "Some Daniel Coleman. I barely made out the name. My hands are shaking from fine service. I'll check everything by morning. Richard is lucid. He is responsive. He's probably healthier than both of us put together," Leonard said. She just removed him from the game. "Margaret, Linda predicted this. Item 4, word for word. I remember we prepared for this scenario. Try to sleep. We'll start pushing back first thing in the morning." "What sleep? I'll put the kettle on and wait for your news." By morning, Margaret had found out that Daniel Coleman had a degree in education, no medical license, no connection to psychiatry at all. 2 days later, Richard was released. The court rejected Katie's guardianship petition. Katie immediately backed off. "Dad, that Coleman guy fooled me. I thought he was a real medical expert. I was worried about you. I didn't do it out of malice." Leonard hung up after speaking with the attorney, walked over to the dresser, and looked at Linda's photograph. "Item 4 from your list, Linda. Exactly. You saw right through her." Katie went quiet for 2 months. In September, Leonard decided to test whether she was preparing another strike. He called his granddaughter himself. "Hey, Katie. I have a doctor's appointment on the 15th. Routine maintenance, you might say. Could you give your grandpa a ride?" Ride-share drivers are fussy these days. Either they don't come or they stop 3 blocks away. "No problem, Grandpa. Of course I'll take you. Don't even ask." The decision was hard for him. In effect, he was turning his own body into bait to see whether his granddaughter would bite. He slipped a pen-shaped recorder into his jacket pocket. At the hospital, Katie excused herself. "Grandpa, I'll run to the cafeteria and get some water. I'll be right back." 5 minutes turned into 20. Leonard's jacket was hanging over a chair in the hallway. The recorder was running. They would later listen to that recording 4 times: Leonard, Margaret, the investigator, and the prosecutor. Katie's voice was businesslike, without a tremor. "Olivia, you were recommended to me as someone who can solve delicate problems. My grandfather is 83. His health isn't what it used to be. We both understand the end is close. I need a medical death certificate, but for later. I can bring $5,000 in cash tomorrow." Olivia Parker's voice was cautious. "But his doctor is on vacation right now. That makes things difficult." Katie did not pause. Even better, fewer unnecessary questions. Katie had taken the $5,000 from payday loans. Debt was already pressing on her and Nathan from every side, and that noose was pushing her into more desperate moves. The next day, Olivia Parker filed Leonard's death certificate with county vital records using the forged signature of a doctor who, at that moment, was lying on a beach in Cancun. The banks reacted immediately. A post-death procedure began on the accounts of a living man, and the system threw up a red flag. Leonard was ready. Margaret called him that same evening. "Leonard, the bank froze your accounts. The system identified you as deceased. Everything triggered automatically." "Margaret, receives notice of my own death through a banking app is certainly new. 30 years in law, and I never saw that kind of creativity in my career. The investigators are getting involved today. They'll pick Parker up right at work." Olivia Parker started talking before anyone even offered her an attorney. One thread pulled out an entire web. It turned out she had been filing false death certificates for a whole group operating across 4 states. The state investigators had been tracking the network for 6 months, but they had not been able to reach the people ordering the documents. Now the lead had found itself, and it pointed straight at Katie. On September 22nd, Leonard gave a detailed statement to the investigator. He included the recorder file, the screenshots, and a copy of Linda's journal. Surveillance was placed on Katie and Nathan. That evening, Leonard took Linda's leather notebook from the closet, opened the appendix, and placed a neat checkmark beside item 6, bribing medical personnel. Katie struck next on October 8th, and this time she was aiming not at paper, but at the body. Leonard had a scheduled procedure under light sedation. Katie offered to drive him. Leonard agreed. By that point, he no longer refused his granddaughter anything, because every action of hers was information, and every step became a line in the future indictment. There was only one thing he did not know. Several days before the procedure, Katie had used his state services account to file a fake gift deed and applications with the county recorder to transfer the condo and the house outside Evergreen into her own name. She had seen his password back in the spring when she was helping him figure out the website. She had found copies of his driver's license, passport, and social security card in the dresser drawer. Only one thing remained: the confirmation code from a text message. When Leonard was lying in the recovery room, still trapped in the fog of anesthesia, an unfamiliar man in a white coat appeared in the doorway. Kevin Glass, a friend of Nathan's, had been paid $3,000 from yet another credit card for that visit. "Mr. Miller, don't worry. Everything is fine. We just need to confirm your cardiology appointment. Please tell me the numbers from the text." 4 digits. Leonard recited them, not understanding that he was confirming the transfer of his condo and house to Katie. One text message, and 60 years of his life were hanging by a thread. But the nurse on duty was more attentive than Katie had expected. Leonard's chart listed one child, a son. The young woman who had brought the patient in had introduced herself as his daughter. The nurse made a note and informed the department head. He came to the room personally. "Mr. Miller, forgive the question, but do you have a daughter?" "No, only one son." "A strange man came into your room. He's not on any staff list. The cameras caught him leaning over you with a phone, and some woman stood outside the door. She introduced herself as your daughter." Leonard asked to see the footage. On the screen, Kevin Glass entered the room, bent over him, and showed him the phone. In the hallway outside, Katie looked at her watch. That same evening, Leonard called Margaret. "Margaret, she got into my state services account while I was lying there after anesthesia, staring at the ceiling. She sent in some guy, and I gave him the code myself. She filed to transfer the condo and the house to herself." "When exactly did this happen?" "Today, about 3 hours ago. Then we still have the night. Registration usually takes 3 to 12 days, but if she paid for an expedited filing, it could slip through tomorrow. First thing in the morning, I'm filing to freeze it. But understand this, Leonard. Until we block everything, she can try anything. I understand. The will. Rewrite it today. Run while the notary is still open. And change your state account password immediately. Turn on 2-factor authentication and every notification available. She's wandering around in there like she owns the place. We won't give her a second chance. Dear God, Margaret, I'm ashamed. 30 years at the plant, I kicked back fake powers of attorney by the stack, and here they stole the password right from under my nose. At the plant, they were strangers, Leonard. Here, it was your granddaughter. There's no antivirus against family. Only healthy distrust treats that. Go to the notary. By 9 that night, Leonard was sitting in a notary's office, signing a new document. All property to Richard, with a specified share reserved for the younger grandson, Alex, and his children. To Catherine Carter, $1. The notary looked at the amount and raised his eyes. Are you sure, Mr. Miller? $1 as an inheritance. That's essentially an open challenge. Exactly, Leonard replied. Consider it my official statement, the most meaningful one I've made in years. It's my duty to warn you. An heir who receives such a symbolic amount can easily contest the will in court. She could claim pressure, diminished capacity, confusion. By all means, let her try. I have enough material on that heir for 3 criminal cases. If she starts a war over $1, I'll ask the court to reduce it to a penny for spite. Kevin Glass talked on the 3rd day. The state investigators had already been watching Katie since September, and Glass, understanding that He had become part of a criminal case, laid out everything. Who paid him, how much, what the plan was, and whose idea it had been. Margaret filed a request to freeze the property registration and a police report for fraud. But the procedure took time, and Katie understood that. On October 10th, while the request was still pending, she struck again. The house outside Evergreen, worth about $750,000, appeared on a real estate website. Katie had signed the purchase agreement using a fake power of attorney. It had been prepared by one of Nathan's acquaintances, a notary who had lost his license a year earlier but kept his forms and stamp. Margaret found the listing first. "Leonard, the news isn't great. Your house has been listed for sale." Some black market notary stamped the power of attorney, even though his license was revoked last year. The forms are real, the stamps are real, and his authority is zero. "Listen, Margaret, my granddaughter has assembled an entire freak show. A fake psychiatrist, a fake doctor, and now a defrocked notary. If she finds a couple of retired judges, she can open her own country with its own laws. Don't give them ideas." The realtor swallowed it whole. Granddaughter, taking care of grandpa. Documents sparkling clean. I'm filing a ban on any transaction without your personal appearance. After that, no one removes so much as a stool from the house without your signature. But the house was only a test balloon. The real target was a commercial building in downtown Denver, worth about $3.5 million and bringing in nearly $20,000 a month in rent. Katie had found the documents in her mother's papers 6 months earlier, and since then, she had not been able to think about anything else. If the house sale went through, the building would be next. After that, one-way tickets to a country with no extradition treaty. On October 11th, Katie showed up at the notary's office with the fake death certificate, the same one Parker had filed, and demanded that an estate case be opened. She attached statements from 2 witnesses who supposedly had been present during Leonard's final days. Margaret got there first. She filed objections with the notary board and sent the materials to the prosecutor. The hearing was set for October 16th. She checked the witnesses in 2 hours and called Leonard. "Leonard, her witnesses are a circus. The first person is a stock photo from the internet. That man advertises toothpaste on banner ads. The second is a real estate agent from Omaha. The only problem is he has no idea he supposedly helped see you off into the next world. With my granddaughter's imagination, she should have written detective novels instead of cooking up powers of attorney. Wasted talent." At 6:30 the next morning, Richard's phone rang. Dad, Grandpa passed away during the night. Richard was standing in the kitchen in his underwear and undershirt, holding a kettle. Leonard sat across from him at the table, stirring sugar into his coffee. A small black recorder with a blinking red light lay between them, already on because Leonard had been waiting for this call. "He signed everything over to me and Nathan," Katie continued in a voice she had clearly rehearsed in front of the mirror. "Cold, businesslike, final. There's nothing for you. You've always been happy with little things, Dad. That's fine. Grandpa just wanted the people who understand business to handle it." Nathan's voice cut through in the background. The son-in-law grabbed the phone. "You're free, loser." Richard did not argue. He did not hang up. He silently pressed the speaker button and set the phone on the table. Leonard pushed his mug aside, calmly dabbed his lips with a napkin, leaned toward the device, and spoke with that particular tone that, for 30 years, had made contractors at the plant straighten their backs all at once. "Good morning, Katie. Grandpa is on the line. Alive, healthy, and I haven't even lost my appetite. My coffee did get cold while I was listening to you, but we'll survive that." The silence lasted 7 seconds. Then came a sharp, panicked breath, rustling, and the sound of something falling. "Gee, Grandpa. Oh my God, thank goodness. The hospital called me. They said you—" I got so scared, I didn't know what to do. "Which hospital was that, Katie? I haven't shown my face in a medical facility in about 5 years. Give me the number they called from. I'll call back and thank them for their vigilance." I don't remember. Everything was a blur. I was panicking. Yes, panic can knock the memory right out of a person. Here's the trouble, Katie. Nobody called you. Nobody could have called you. But your Nathan has been blowing up the banks since 5:30 in the morning reporting my death, and he used his personal phone number. Brilliant boy. A born secret agent. Your Nathan would have been exposed in the opening credits. Something crashed on the other end, a chair or a stool. Nathan's voice broke through the noise, ragged and furious. "How did you?" "Katie, you told me to call. You said he doesn't check his email before lunch." "Shut up!" Katie screamed. "You were supposed to use the burner phone and make a different email. I told you 100 times." Leonard listened to them quarrel while watching sparrows fight over a breadcrumb outside the window. Then he added quietly, but in such a way that both of them fell silent. "Nathan, son, don't stutter like that. Breathe deeper. I understand. It's early. Your brain is still asleep, though frankly, it isn't very alert at noon either. For your information, I'm recording this conversation, and your morning art project with the banks has also been documented. I may be old, but I can still think. You're young, but Lord forgive me, you're dumb as a fence post. You've heard the saying, I assume, don't dig a grave for someone else. Well, kids, you didn't dig yourselves a grave, you dug a quarry. Settle in." The line went dead mid-word. Richard stared at the phone as if it had just exploded. Leonard turned off the recorder, slipped it into his pocket, and said, "Get dressed. We're going to Margaret's office. It's time to end this circus." At Margaret Wilson's office, it was not just the attorney waiting for them. On her laptop screen was Katie's application to the notary. Then Russell Hayes called. Russell Hayes, a private investigator and former military man, had contacted them through Margaret. They met on the 4th level of a parking garage, surrounded by strangers' cars and concrete columns. Hayes did not bother with greetings. He pulled out his phone and showed Leonard the screen. A message from Nathan to a third party, full package, target 83 years old, lives isolated. Window 24 to 48 hours, payment on completion. Full package means one thing in their language, Hayes said, permanent removal. Nathan offered me $10,000 at first, then raised it to 25. I don't play those games, but he'll find someone who does. You need to disappear for a little while. 2 days. He handed Leonard a disposable flip phone. Communication only through this brick. Leave your smartphone at home. They can locate you through it in 5 minutes. Don't use bank cards. Any purchase is a beacon. Cash only. 48 hours. Stay quiet while the officers catch the hired man in the act. Richard looked at his father. Leonard put the phone in his pocket, straightened the collar of his jacket, and said, "We're going to the house outside Evergreen. In the city, we're sitting ducks. On my land, I set the rules." "Dad, are you sure?" "Richard, I lived there for 30 years. I know every bump in the ground and every hole in the fence. Let's move." The gates of the country house were hanging crooked. The lock had been broken, the metal twisted. Fresh tire tracks cut across the driveway. The window frame near the front door was cracked. Someone had tried to force it open, but the alarm had stopped them. The cameras had recorded the visit. The day before, at 2 in the afternoon, Nathan and an unfamiliar man with a crowbar had arrived. The stranger did the work. Nathan stood behind him with his hands in his pockets, looking around. Deputy Samuel Clark arrived 40 minutes later, inspected the fence, the window, and the cameras. "Leonard, I believe you, but without witnesses willing to give statements on the record, I can't put more weight on it. I'll come by every couple of hours and patrol. Change that gate lock today. Don't drag your feet. Samuel, what the cameras caught should be enough for the case." "For the report, absolutely. I'll write it up and move those camera files to the cloud. Otherwise, they'll carry off your hard drive right along with the footage. I know these types. Today they break the lock. Tomorrow they come for the server." When Clark left, Leonard took a sealed envelope from his travel bag. Inside was the updated will and Linda's journal appendix, 12 items. 6 had come true. Beside each was a check mark, placed carefully, like a mark on a ledger at the plant. Richard took the list, and the paper trembled in his fingers. He read down to the final item, where Linda's handwriting, larger now, uneven but clear, said, "Ricky, if you're reading this, then everything happened the way I feared. Don't blame yourself. You loved her because you're a good father. But now listen to Grandpa. He knows what to do. I love you. Your Linda." Richard sat down on the floor and pressed the sheet to his chest. Leonard lowered himself beside him, shoulder to shoulder, and froze there. He did not hug him. He did not stroke his head. He simply sat and stayed. That was enough. When Richard lifted his eyes, dawn was showing outside the window. "She saved us," he whispered. Leonard nodded. "She always had a plan B, even when we didn't know it." They did not go to bed. Richard made tea. Leonard sat by the window and kept watch. At 11 at night, the camera above the gate blinked. A car was crawling up the driveway with its headlights off. "Dad, it's starting." "I see. No headlights. Amateur spies." Richard took a flashlight and went out onto the porch. The car stopped at the gate, doors slammed. 2 silhouettes. One in a jacket, the other taller and broader, with something long in his hand. Richard switched on the flashlight. The beam hit Katie in the face. She squeezed her eyes shut, but did not stop. "Turn that off. You're blinding me. I need to get into the utility shed." "What for?" "Because my documents and things are in there. It's family property, so I have every right. You know that." Nathan stepped forward, and metal flashed in the light. A short, heavy crowbar. "Get out of the way, Richard. Don't make this worse." "What are you going to do? Hit me with the crowbar." Nathan jerked forward. Richard caught him by the wrist, twisted it, and for 5 seconds they struggled in the dark, breathing hard and slipping on the wet grass. The crowbar clanged against a stone. Katie screamed, "Nathan, stop it! That's enough!" Then Leonard's voice came from the porch. It was not loud, but it froze them both. "Smile. You're on hidden camera, and the microphones are working too. The investigator will enjoy this blockbuster by morning." He stood on the top step with his phone held out. The screen glowed in the dark. Nathan stepped back, releasing Richard. The crowbar lay on the ground. That was when Katie snapped. $3.5 million, Grandpa. A building right downtown. Rent money. Serious money. I found all of Mom's papers 6 months ago. Tax statements, everything. Did you really think I'd just leave that alone? What am I, not family? Am I not your granddaughter? Katie, you showed your talents early, Leonard said. At 12, you stole small things. At 35, you moved on to the big leagues. Nothing changed. This is all you. You poisoned Dad against me, you and Mom. She was always worried about everybody, always acting like a victim. In the end, she just gave up. She left without even trying to fight. Katie, shut up, Richard said, but Katie no longer heard him. She never decided anything. She just endured and whined her whole life. And now you're turning her into some holy martyr. Richard stood still, and the flashlight in his hand trembled, not from the cold. When his daughter ran out of breath and fell silent, he said, "Your mother knew everything." Katie stared at him. She kept a journal for more than a year. She laid out, step by step, everything you're doing now. She even predicted this little tantrum, almost word for word. That wasn't weakness, Katie. That was intelligence. It's a shame you didn't inherit it. What journal? The headlights of a patrol car swung around the turn. Deputy Clark had arrived on his scheduled patrol and found the whole scene. A broken gate, a crowbar on the ground, and 2 trespassers on someone else's property. 10 minutes later, Katie and Nathan were sitting in the patrol vehicle in handcuffs while Clark called the station. Richard looked through the back window of the car at his daughter's face. Her lips moved, repeating the same thing again and again. What journal? What journal? He turned away and went back into the house. The next day, at 2 in the afternoon, Leonard, Richard, and Margaret entered the courtroom. Katie was already sitting there with an electronic monitor on her ankle, released to house arrest after the previous night's detention. A court-appointed defense attorney sat beside her. Margaret dismantled the fake witnesses in 15 minutes. Both confessed before she even asked a second question. "They just gave us a script and told us to read it on video," the first one said, not raising his eyes. "They sent $500 each to our cards. We thought it was just regular family drama." "Regular family drama," Margaret repeated, "with fake death certificates and a hired killer thrown in. What charming traditions you have." Leonard testified for 20 minutes. His daily routine, rental management, volunteer work on Thursdays, amounts, dates, names of tenants. Not one stumble. Judge Helen Barrett listened without interrupting. Then Nathan was brought in wearing handcuffs and a wrinkled shirt, unshaven. He spoke in a flat monotone and did not stop. Calls to the banks, bribing Olivia Parker, the scheme with the state services account, money from the sale of Linda's stolen earrings and pearl necklace. When they played the recording from the morning call, Katie's own voice filled the room. "I told you to use a different email, idiot." Katie covered her face with both hands. Judge Barrett removed her glasses and placed them on the bench. "The picture is clear. Leonard Miller is alive, competent, and the victim of planned fraud. I am forwarding the materials to the prosecutor for inclusion in the criminal case and for additional charges." The prosecutor immediately moved to modify Katie's conditions of release. By evening, her house arrest was replaced with custody. When the deputies led Katie past her father, she stopped for 1 second and silently formed the question with her lips. "What journal?" Richard did not answer. The door closed. At the cafe across the street, Alex was waiting for them. He had flown in that morning from Portland. "I need to confess something," Alex said, once everyone had sat down. "In July, Katie invited me to lunch. She offered me $60,000 if I would say in court that Dad was unstable, that he forgot everything, got confused, and lost things." "And at what point did you tell her to go to hell?" Leonard asked. "I refused. Remember, I called you on August 2nd, but I'll be honest, I thought about it for maybe 10 seconds. $60,000 is 3 years of my medication. It's Daisy's school. Real sports for Max, not pull-up bars in the park. I stood there and calculated it, and it still makes me sick." Richard reached across the table and covered Alex's hand with his own. "But you didn't do it." "No." "Then it's over. That's what matters." A week later, Richard went to the detention center alone, without telling his father. Not for reconciliation, for goodbye. Katie sat across from him. No makeup, wrinkled clothes, her hands locked together on the table. She looked smaller than he remembered. "Look at this," Richard said, and put a copy of one page from Linda's journal on the table. "Katie will try to bribe Alex. She will offer him money. Alex won't take it, but he'll eat himself alive over it." The entry was dated March of 2021, 3 years before Katie thought of it. Katie read for a long time, then raised her eyes. "She never told me she loved me. She loved you more than you're capable of understanding. That's why she wrote all this, so you wouldn't have time to destroy the lives of the people she cared about. You hate me now." Richard was silent. The lamp overhead flickered with a faint electric crackle. "I don't even know. There's just emptiness. But I will never be able to trust you again. They've offered you a deal. You admit everything, cooperate, and instead of 6 years, you serve 2 in a minimum security state facility. The prosecutor is in favor. I didn't stand in the way, but when you get out, forget our address forever. If you try to show up, I will find a way to have that deal revisited." He stood and walked to the door. Behind him came a quiet voice. "Dad, I'm sorry." He did not turn around. Katie signed the agreement 3 days later. In January, Margaret called. "Leonard, congratulations. We're done. Everything has been restructured. Richard is the primary heir. Alex comes next. The building, the house, the company, all protected. A fly won't get through. Nathan is being handled separately. Fraud, conspiracy, solicitation, preparation for murder. His attorney got him released on bond, so your Mr. Carter is cooling his heels in Kansas City and waiting for trial. He filed for bankruptcy and is preparing for confiscation. He has no rights to the property now, and he never will." Katie's letter had arrived 3 weeks before that call. It lay unopened on the kitchen table. Every morning, Richard walked past it, set a mug beside it, took the mug away, wiped the table around the envelope, and did not touch it. In the 4th week, he opened it. The handwriting was neat, without crossings out. Confessions, apologies, a promise not to make contact, not one excuse, not one but. Richard finished reading, folded the page, put it back into the envelope, and did not answer. The next morning, he drove to the cemetery. He placed a bundle of dried wildflowers and a few sprigs of rabbit brush on Linda's grave, gathered the previous summer near the house outside Evergreen. "Well, everything went according to your plan. Everyone is alive. Daisy has shot up. Max started swimming. Alex is holding up well. Me too, or at least I'm trying. Dad grumbles enough for both of us, as usual. He bought himself a new coat, finally. You would have appreciated that." He adjusted the flowers and left. That evening, on the glassed-in porch of the house outside Evergreen, Leonard and Richard sat side by side. Beyond the glass were Frost, Bear Creek under a crust of ice, and the foothills stretching toward the horizon. From inside the house came Daisy's laughter and Alex's voice. "Max, don't stick your spoon in the pot, you'll burn your tongue. The cocoa just came off the stove." Leonard placed his hand on his son's shoulder. Richard nodded. Sometimes family is not tested by love, but by what people do when greed finally shows its face. Tell me in the comments what you would have done in Richard's place, or whether you've ever seen betrayal come from someone everyone kept forgiving. If this story moved you, give the video a like, subscribe to the channel, and tap the bell so you don't miss the next story.